welcome back to From Heart to Heart. Today our topic is the evolution of atherosclerosis. Hello, doctor.
Hello, Mireille.
Can you please help me with the pronunciation?
Atherosclerosis is a word composed of two parts, atherosclerosis, and they are Greek in origin. And athero means pudding, sclerosis means hardening. So basically it describes the deposition of fat, that's pudding, in the wall of the artery, leading to hardening of the artery.
Let's watch a video to see the evolution of this disease.
Our knowledge of coronary atherosclerosis has changed dramatically in the last few years. New imaging techniques such as intravascular ultrasound, or IVUS, have made it possible to investigate atherosclerosis in its early stages. This video is devoted to broadening your understanding of the progression of early atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is a chronic disease resulting in the buildup of plaque. Atherosclerotic plaques develop and progress within the artery wall long before they begin to encroach on the lumen. Because they do not protrude into the lumen, they escape detection by conventional diagnostic tools like angiography. Coronary artery disease is a leading cause of morbidity and mortality worldwide. To reduce the extraordinary risk associated with CAD, early recognition of CAD and aggressive risk factor intervention are imperative. Elevated low-density lipoprotein, or LDL cholesterol, is strongly associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular events. Here you see LDL, HDL, white blood cells, and red blood cells in circulation. The majority of the cholesterol in the blood is contained in low-density lipoprotein, which transports cholesterol from the liver to nerve tissues, cell membranes, and other cells for metabolic purposes. The cholesterol in atherosclerotic plaques is derived mainly from excess LDL cholesterol. High-density lipoprotein, or HDL, is believed to function as a retrieval service, removing cholesterol from the circulation to the liver for excretion. For this reason, HDL is often referred to as the good cholesterol. Low levels of HDL cholesterol are considered an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease. White blood cells, called monocytes, are wandering scavengers that have the primary function of consuming foreign or damaging substances. Monocytes participate in the atherosclerotic process by taking up residence within the vessel wall and consuming lipids. Red blood cells are the transporters of oxygen and other nutrients to the body's tissues. Atherosclerosis develops from complex interactions between LDL, constituents of blood such as monocytes, and cells in the arterial wall. The normal artery wall is composed of three layers: the intima, the media, and the adventitia. The intima, or inner layer, is composed of a single layer of cells called the endothelium. The media contains mostly smooth muscle cells that enable the vessel to dilate or constrict. The adventitia, or outermost layer, is composed mostly of fibroelastic tissue. The adventitia is separated from the media by the external elastic membrane. LDL passes through endothelial cells and enters the intima, where it can undergo a process called oxidation. Oxidized LDL is toxic, and this initiates an inflammatory process. Monocytes respond by migrating from the bloodstream into the artery wall, where they mount the inflammatory response. Now called macrophages, they engulf the cholesterol-rich oxidized LDL and become foam cells. When the foam cells die, they release their lipid content, creating what is known as a lipid core. Continued plaque growth caused by accumulation of LDL within the intima causes the external elastic membrane to expand. This compensatory enlargement, known as arterial remodeling, allows the vessel to maintain an adequate, if not normal, lumen area and blood flow. For this reason, angiography, which visualizes only those plaques that encroach upon the lumen, underrepresents the extent of atherosclerosis. However, as a burden of plaque increases, the artery can no longer compensate by expanding outward, and the plaque begins to protrude into the lumen. This generally occurs when plaque involvement reaches about 40% of the vessel circumference. Under certain conditions, such as may be caused by biomechanical and hemodynamic stresses, disruption of plaques can occur. Plaques prone to rupture include those that contain a large lipid core covered by a thin fibrous cap. Often these plaques have not penetrated the luminal area and hence are not visible angiographically. When a plaque ruptures, the lipid core comes into contact with the blood. This sets the stage for the formation of a thrombus or clot. The thrombus may partially or totally block an artery, causing an abrupt reduction in blood flow. Partial blockage of the lumen may cause the symptoms of angina. Complete blockage of the vessel lasting more than 2 to 4 hours can cause an acute event such as MI. Healing may also take place. In fact, plaque rupture with subsequent healing is now believed to be the major mechanism by which atherosclerotic lesions progress and narrow the lumen. Plaques that heal generally have a higher fibrotic composition than before, making them more stable and less prone to future rupture.
As you can see from this beautiful video, that the disease called atherosclerosis grows very slowly. And you see plaques start little and then become bigger and bigger, and that takes a long time.
So unlike the video, the process is much longer.
Yes, much longer. And the process, as a matter of fact, they say starts even in children, and it continues to evolve. And the second point I need to emphasize is the fact that small plaques are more dangerous than the larger plaques. And these are the ones that can rupture and can cause problems.
Are there any ways to detect the plaques?
There are ways of detecting them if they are large enough, like an angiogram. But the little ones are the ones that escape detection by angiograms.
What is an angiogram?
An angiogram is basically a test where we inject a dye in the coronary arteries to see the anatomy or the blockages in the coronary arteries. And this test entails the introduction of a needle through the groin into the artery in the groin.
So it's invasive?
It is invasive. Okay. Or the artery in the forearm, we call it the radial artery. And after introduction of the needle, a guide wire is introduced, and then a catheter is introduced. A catheter is a very small lumen tube. And this tube goes all the way up to the aorta and into the coronary arteries, and a dye is injected. And with the dye, we can see the lumen of the coronary arteries to see any blockages. But as I said, the little plaques escape detection by these angiograms, and that's why to detect the little ones, you need to do an intravascular ultrasound. And this is basically the same like doing the angiogram, but we introduce a catheter that has a transducer that emits ultrasound waves.
This is a little like the foxes mentioned in the book of Song of Songs. Chapter 2, verse 15 says, "Catch us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines." The little foxes are little like the little plaques. We don't worry about them because they're too small that we can see them, and we only worry about the big ones. But the little foxes are the ones that can easily squeeze through our fence and get through our vineyard and ruin everything inside.
Absolutely. And it is important to realize, in addition to the fact that we have to really work hard on detecting the little plaques, the fact that we have to go out again of the comfort zone to detect these little ones by thorough self-examination.
And that brings us again to sleep.
Absolutely.
So S for sitting down with yourself, L for listening to yourself, E for exposing yourself, the second E is for examination, and the third, and the P is for prayer.
Absolutely. And I would like again to stress the fact that how subtle the sin can be and how subtle Satan can be in introducing sin to us. He doesn't introduce sin to us in an ugly picture, but he might say, well, it's just a little white lie.
Little samples of it.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt. And you get used to lying, and every time you think it's a white lie, until you become a pathological liar, and everybody knows about you that you are a pathological liar. And the other example that's so clear in my mind is that Satan, when he introduces, he wouldn't introduce a sin to you. He wouldn't say commit adultery. He wouldn't say that. But he would start by asking you, what's wrong with just a look? Look at this person, and there is no harm. It's just a look. And then a look leads to another look, and another look leads to a lustful look. And then you start to develop thoughts in your mind, and these thoughts become really very aggressive. And
they fight against you.
Exactly. And then you start, the thoughts become passion, and then passion moves you to dig deep into sin, either on the internet or somewhere else. And the more you dig into sin,
the more hungry and thirsty you get.
Absolutely.
Our Lord warns us in Deuteronomy 11:16. It says, "Take heed to yourselves, lest your heart be deceived." What can we take from that?
Obviously, we have to check every thought and every look. And I do remember in the past, we were taught to use a spiritual notebook when we sit with ourselves every night before we go to bed and write down, how many evil look did I have today? How many lie did I commit
So that helps
today?
You see the majority of things you do and control it.
Exactly. And this really, this is a very useful way of tracking yourself and see where you really tend to fall, and keep an eye, a watchful eye on the way you look, and the way you talk, and in the way you think. Because sometimes sin starts with a little thought, and this little thought can bring about a big sin in the end.
And that takes us to our recap today. So today we've seen how atherosclerosis grows very slowly, and it's caused by little and small plaques. The small plaques seem smaller, but they are the most dangerous ones. And that's exactly how Satan introduces sin to us. He gives us something very little, and bit by bit, he drags us into the rest of the sin. So take heed to yourselves, lest your heart be deceived. So keep your guard, and we'll see you next time on From Heart to Heart.